What are the aspects of difference which we might recognise now in the 21st century and which e-learning environments may support? Well, there are age differences. There are differences of cultural background. There are differences in terms of, what students already know, how much they've learned. I'm not going to call this intelligence or ability yet, because I think we should work on the assumption that, that the capacities of human beings outside ranges of definable disability are pretty well, are comparable, and that often it's a matter of you just haven't done that yet, or you haven't learnt that yet. But there are differences about what you've done and what you've learned. So there are a number of dimensions of difference that we inevitably, no matter how much we try and make these classes the same with these systems of calibration which are on about uniformity and similarity, there are going to be differences. And by the way, the classic mode of dealing with those differences is the teacher would speak to the middle of the class, right? So I'll use the old-fashioned words, some of the so-called smarter kids got bored, some of the kids who weren't following it got bored. Maybe the kids in the middle of the class were a bit bored as well, but by the way, on those peripheries they were bored, and the teacher then tried to lowest common denominator teaching. Front of the room, we hope that basically it's about right, lowest common denominator. Just a little side commentary on this image. These images that I've used here are images of scholars, tangential images. This is St. Anthony of Padua. I like this picture because it's El Greco, who's the great artist. And it really, for me, it's just a picture of the culture of the book, the culture of thought represented in these transmittable kinds of ways. So, what do I mean by the culture of the book? Well, one of the great things about modernity and the great thing about the moment that we live in now is the extraordinary access to knowledge through transmittable communication. So, in the world of orality, the only communication that was possible was on a person-to-person basis. I'm not saying anything about those worlds other than they were wonderful, rich worlds. They're worlds that don't exist anymore, except in our everyday informal lives. But the cultures which were purely oral barely exist. And for better or for worse, we've made it an objective in the world that all students become literate and are able to operate in this world of communicable knowledge. Now, the book, for me, it's a pretty important moment, to be quite frank, in which knowledge becomes transmittable across quite long distances, and we build this edifice which is libraries and bookstores and textbooks and schools, which in some ways, through this series, I've been a little bit critical of, saying that we can go well beyond that. But when we go well beyond that into the world of the internet and immediately accessible information, where I can pull out my phone out of my pocket and I can look anything up on Wikipedia, it's an amazing world which we want to make the most of in schools and our learning environments. But in a way, it's an extension of this idea of readily accessible, communicable knowledge, quite a radical extension in a whole lot of ways, but it is actually still going back to the culture of the book. So this particular image, I saw it in a gallery in Madrid, and I was just taken by it. This person who is obviously a person of the book, and for whom the book, this transmittable, communicable knowledge, is a very important part of who he is as a human being. Okay, now the minute we start to recognise these differences, there are a number of different dimensions of differentiation. So the first one I want to mention is captured around ideas of personalisation and individualisation, which, look, are problematic notions in this sense. Individualisation often means it's just me and my computer, or me and my basal reading series or whatever it is, and I'm working at my own pace, and it's a very isolated, individualised kind of experience. It's problematic. But nevertheless, what's interesting about it is a recognition that students need to be able to engage in a way which is relevant to what they know and don't know already. And look, before technology, I remember I was in the generation where what turned up at my school at the other end of the world in Australia, from where I am now in the US, was this big shiny box from this place with a logo called SRA, Science what Science Reading Associates or some SRA. I don't remember even what it stands for now, to be quite frank. And in that box, instead of us all reading, in Australia it was the Betty and Jim readers. It was Dick and Jane in the US. Everywhere in the world they had these basal readers, and every kid used to work at the same pace through the readers. Well, look, this was the first recognition that not everybody in the class was at the same reading level. So there was this big shiny box that turned up in the classroom with a series of cards, which were like 4-page cards with readings on them, and they were colour coded. There was, the blue level, red level, green level, all the way through. And you would operate at your reading level and go at your own pace, and once you'd finish one colour, you'd go on to the next. Now, even before technology, well, when I say technology, I mean computer-mediated technology, because this box from SRA actually is a technology in a sense. This was one of the first recognitions in a conventional classroom that there were differences around reading levels. So anyhow, let's just talk about then these technology-mediated environments. One of the premises of differentiated instruction is that you've got to be able to have students doing different things at the same time. Not everyone on the same page at the same time doing the same chapter, and not doing the same test at the same time. I mean, working their way past a series of interim assessments before they can go on to the next stage. Now, in fact, that's logistically hard work for a teacher with 20, 30 students, whatever the number is. SRA helped that back there when I was at school, but technology-mediated environments really can help that a hell of a lot. But the only problem with them really is these isolated learner experiences. The way in which individualization means that there isn't structured interaction with other learners. Now, I think we can work on that, and I think that technology-mediated environments can do that in some very, very powerful ways. In my master's course, I have, I teach people who are currently in the classroom as teachers and who are thinking about innovative pedagogy and new learning technologies in their classroom. And from class to class and lesson to lesson, I am amazed by the work that teachers are doing with kids doing different things in the same classroom, things appropriate to their needs and interests. And I just know that it logistically would have been so hard to do with quite the level of finesse and sophistication that the participants in my courses, the teachers who are doing my courses actually use. So that's one issue.